Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Cameras to Couches podcast. Another weekly highlight here.
We're back.
We're back
with the highlights.
We've got a big highlight. We've been, I have been spending like the past couple of weeks, unfortunately, just finding myself in a Coen Brothers rabbit hole, and I think it's time to talk about some Coen Brothers on this podcast. So this week, we put up the poll. We went between Oh Brother, Where Art Thou and True Grit, and you guys voted for True Grit. Let's go. I
texted Zach before I put the poll up, and I was like, hey, I was thinking we'd go Coen Brothers, and he was like, I was thinking the exact same thing.
I've had a weird...
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I've had a weird rash of just like finding myself watching a bunch of Coen Brothers movies here lately, so I think I've seen like 7 at this point, and they're just the best. I need to rewatch A Serious Man. That's the next one on my list, but... Does Inside Llewyn Davis count twice, because that movie is basically the same movie by the time you get to its end? It feels like a flat plane of time.
I haven't seen it.
It's really good.
I saw the bits and pieces. I saw the scene with the orange cat where he was chasing the cat.
Llewyn is the cat.
Wait.
That's all I'm going to say. Llewyn is the cat.
I hate that you told me that, because I'm going to be thinking about it for the next 20 minutes. But I was in. He's just chasing this cat, and he's hanging out with it. He's trying to traverse through New York City with it, and it like gets away on the subway. I was in.
We had to traverse through New York.
Through New York.
Okay, so we're not going to talk about Inside Llewyn Davis, but I am just going to keep going on about the Coen Brothers. This is an interesting entry in their routine. So we're going to talk about True Grit, their 2010 movie. Very, very highly acclaimed upon its release. Not so highly awarded, but it still sits pretty well in their library.
I think it had like a bunch of nominations, but no
yeah,
awards.
Haley Steinfeld was famously she is the best actress of this. I don't know if she is the best actress of this year, but she was nominated for supporting actress, even though the movie revolves entirely around her character, which is kind of bizarre.
Actually the main character.
And she was 13 years old when they cast her in this movie, so
we'll get into that later. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. So this is a remake of the 1969 John Wayne film of the same name, which was in turn based off of the 1968 novel by Charles Portis.
This is a lot more novel accurate.
The John Wayne movie is a little more happy-go-lucky. I won't even put it that way. It is a very, very much more non-tense version of this, and it ends on a much lighter note, and it's very much like a product of a long tradition of westerns going into the 60s that are pretty accessible to a lot of people. But this is a very different and very Coen Brothers retelling of this movie. I mean, the Coen Brothers have done stuff like Fargo. They've done, of course, their best picture, No Country for Old Men. They're very good at like very smart scripts, very bland feeling, like dreary and kind of terrifying. They're very, very, very good movies.
They're like Quentin Tarantino's like much more serious
brother. And quieter brother.
Yeah.
And they're a pair of brothers, but they're also brothers. Like very good at able to throw themselves into like a comedic tone. This was the first Coen Brothers movie I ever saw. I don't think I'd ever seen anything before this one. I think it's a good one to start on.
We grew up watching this movie. Like I loved this movie so much growing up. The snake, scary snake.
Oh yeah, there's a really, really good snake scene in this movie.
That was terrifying. I was obsessed with Haley Steinfeld. I wanted to be her.
She's a very, very exceptional in this role. Going toe-to-toe with Jeff Bridges is not easy to do, especially on a Coen Brothers script for the guys that wrote and made The Big Lebowski. But she manages to do it, and she pulls no punches. She's so good in this movie. Yeah, I watched this on a DVD player in our house in Washington State.
Did we have it on Blu-ray? I think we did.
We did not. We had it on a regular DVD because that player didn't play Blu-rays. But
yeah,
I remember watching it and just losing my mind over it. I think I saw this, and then I probably saw Fargo next, and then I think No Country for Old Men was the one after that. And then,
now, had we seen the original True Grit before or after this movie?
It was before, because we have the original True Grit on Blu-ray. And we got that and watched Blu-ray. That version with Dad after this version came out, and then he was like, I don't know if you guys are good with the new version, which was probably reasonable. We were 10, but I also savored this movie when I saw it for the first time. Okay, yeah, this is starring Haley Steinfeld. We've already talked quite a bit about her as Maddie Ross, the main character. Jeff Bridges as Rooster Cogburn. Matt Damon as LaBeef. and Josh Brolin as Tom Chaney. Josh Brolin's actually third billed in this movie, but he doesn't show up until like an hour and 15 into it.
That was one of my fun facts. It's 78 minutes to be exact.
Yeah, it's pretty wild move, but they probably paid him a bunch to be there, so you got to get him on the list. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the plot of this movie. So this starts off with like a wonderful monologue that we'll talk about later. Maddie Ross is a like hyper intelligent 14-year-old living in the South. She lives in Yell County, Arkansas, and her father has just been murdered by this hired hand that he had, whose name is Tom Chaney. She intends to go to Fort Smith, Arkansas, to settle her father's business affairs after his passing, and to try and hunt down Tom Chaney to make him pay for murdering her father. Reasonable. The sheriff informs her that there is no trail of her father's killer, and she opts to hire a U.S. Marshal. She asks if he has any recommendations. He comes across a couple. I think he pitches three at her. And the second one he calls the meanest, but he loves to pull a cork, and it's Rooster Cogburn. And she says, "Where can I find this rooster?" So she goes and finds.
What I love about that scene is that the third man mentioned is like, he's fair, he's good, like no one really dies on his watch. They all come back and serve a fair sentence, and he's like, and he doesn't let a man get away. And she's like, "Nope. Give me the. I want
the mean son
yes.
bitch."
Yes.
And boy, oh boy, does she find him in Rooster Cogburn. So she goes and finds Rooster, who is predisposed in the bathroom when she first meets him. And they eventually, after much convincing and negotiation, she finds out that Rooster is like an abominable drunk, has a quick trigger finger, shoots people down in his path, all that kind of stuff. But she ends up hiring him anyway. He is very unconvinced that she is as true as she says, and he just kind of like doesn't accept her salt at first. And then she tells him that she is going to join him on the journey, and he's like, "No shot."
Absolutely not. I mean, she's like this little 14-year-old girl, and she is like so well spoken.
There's a great bit where she's talking to Rooster, and she's like, "Oh, it'll be fun in the backwoods. It'll be like a coon hunt." And he's like, "Coon hunt? This ain't no coon hunt. This is uncharted territory." It's awesome.
Yeah, that's all I really had to say.
Yeah. So basically, she pays him. He agrees to go with her, and tells her to meet him back at his residence the next morning. When she gets there, he's already gone, and he's left a letter for her that says, "We can't do this. I'm taking up with this Texas Ranger that had previously thrown himself at Maddie, trying to find out where Chaney is. He's been tracking Chaney for a long time. His name's LaBeef." And Rooster is like, "Okay, me and LaBeef are going to go hunt this guy down, and you're going to stay in town and go back to your mom." And she takes off after them, ends up getting to the ferry that's going to take them across the water, and breaks free from the ferryman who tries to hold her back, and she can see the pair of LaBeef and Rooster on the other side of the river, and she swims the horse across the river. She gets out of the river and and just like curses them up and down, and they're
just like so taken aback by like her guts. And,
yeah, they're like, "Okay, well, you know what? They are far from like she's worth her salt at this point." Particularly LaBeef, who is just frustrated at like
she's not backing down. Like she's
yeah. LaBeef tries to embarrass her by literally bending her over his knee and spanking her, and just tries to like affirm his idea of her as a complete child. Her. And Rooster pulls a gun on him and says, "Knock that off," which is awesome. I love that sequence. But anyway, Rooster and LaBeef end up having an argument the following morning. They split back up, and Rooster and Maddie carry on, and eventually come across a small cabin that they were informed of by a fellow traveler, but find that it's already occupied by two other guys. They launch a small strike on the cabin, and Rooster injures one of the men that's inside. Then tries to interrogate them as to the whereabouts of the Lucky Ned Pepper gang, who supposedly Tom Chaney has joined up with and is running with. The group of outlaws that are with Rooster in here are a pair, one of which Rooster already knows. The other one is a very young Methodist kid who's kind of terrified, but he's also been injured by Rooster. He got shot in the leg. And so Rooster starts prodding him and getting at him, and the other gang member ends up killing the younger of the two, the injured one. He cuts his fingers off and stabs him in the chest. And that's something that's always resided with me when I first saw this movie. Ugh, it's rough. Also, like some really, really mild but wild gore for a PG-13 movie in this scene, because Rooster shoots the other outlaw in the face, and you can see like the entry wound of the bullet and his blood spray against the wall and everything. It's a really bold choice for a PG-13 movie. Anyway, they before the kid dies, Rooster's able to get out of him that the Lucky Ned Pepper gang is supposed to be joining them at that cabin, and they were going to be coming that very night. So he and Maddie set up to ambush them when they arrive at the cabin. Instead of the Lucky Ned Pepper gang, LaBeef shows up first. So he goes up to the door, sees that the cabin had been previously occupied, goes in, and as soon as he walks in the door, the Lucky Ned Pepper 4, that it is not the entire gang, it's just these 4, ride up and confront LaBeef. LaBeef is unsuccessful in his confrontation and gets roped by one of the guys and dragged around by his horse. So
he splits his tongue, don't he?
Yeah, he bites through his, almost clean through his tongue. So Rooster kills 3 of the 4 guys. The only one that he doesn't let him go free, but he gets away is Lucky Ned, who's the leader of the Lucky Ned Pepper gang, as you can probably assume. So LaBeef and Rooster and Maddie are now all back together again. Rooster has found like a massive amount of whiskey in the cabin, so he is just like infatuated with himself and totally drunk the whole rest of the trip. They end up like getting to a breaking point, and LaBeef again is like, all right, I'm out, I'm returning to Texas. And this is after Rooster has had like a total, the whiskey's out, I'm out, I'm washing my hands of this whole thing, I'm an old fat man who's been conned into this by a nincompoop and a harpy in trousers. And they end up splitting up again, and Maddie and Rooster stay the night in their camp. And when Maddie wakes up the next morning to water the horses, she goes down to the river and sees Tom Chaney. And it's just like they were there, right there next to him. She pulls a gun on Chaney. Chaney advances on her. She shoots Chaney in the arm, and then falls back into the water. And her gun gets wet, so it misfires the next time she shoots at him. And he captures her, brings her back to the Lucky Ned Pepper gang. Lucky Ned negotiates with Rooster straight up by just yelling down a mountain at him. We never see Rooster when he's negotiating with him. And Rooster's like, you can kill the kid, you can do whatever you want with the kid. And he's like, okay, well, I need to see you riding over that hill in 5 minutes or I'm going to kill the girl. And so then, of course, Rooster rides over the hill, and they're like, okay, everything's been solved. Maddie sits down with Lucky Ned and some of the boys for a like very mild-mannered breakfast. And Josh Brolin, Tom Chaney, is just mad. He wants to kill Maddie because she shot him in the arm and he's in pain and all that kind of stuff. Lucky Ned is like, that's not going to happen. That is not your right. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to evacuate to the old gang hideout and try to get out with like our robbery winnings. And he tells Tom that he has to stay behind with Maddie because they don't have enough horses. And he tells Tom he has to agree not to kill Maddie. Tom is like very hesitant about this. He's trying to get like all the guys to give him a ride. He's unsuccessful, and he and Maddie have to stay at the camp. So he and Maddie then go into conversation. And of course, Maddie, who's been searching for this guy for the murder of her father, is very terse and short with him. And she like tries to negotiate with him a little bit because she's learned from Rooster. And he just like not accept the negotiation at all because she fails in doing so by bringing up that she could get him a lawyer, she could get him like a shorter sentence or whatever. And he's like, well, all I really need is your silence. So he goes to kill her, tries to choke her out, and that's when LaBeef comes in and saves the day and smacks him upside the head with the butt of his rifle. Turns out LaBeef had heard the shot when Maddie had shot Tom and met back up with Rooster, and they came up with a plan where Rooster would go back over the ridge and LaBeef would stay there and wait until the gang left to rescue Maddie. He successfully does so, and it shows Rooster now riding against the other 4 gang members left of the Lucky Ned gang. Rooster goes into a brief negotiation with Lucky Ned where he's like, all right, I can bring you in hotter, I can bring you in cold. And Ned's like, that's big talk for a one-eyed fat man. And Jeff Bridges just launches like an awesome fill your hands, you son of a bitch, and charges at him double barrel fire or double-handed firing pistols, and ends up killing 3 of the 4 of them except for Lucky Ned again. And as Lucky Ned beats up on him to finish the job, LaBeef shoots him in the back from like 300 yards with a carbine, which is awesome. And then LaBeef gets whacked over the head by Tom Chaney, who is now awake. And little Miss Maddie gets the opportunity to finally enact her revenge for her father and shoots that old bastard right in the chest. But the gun kicks so hard that she falls back down a pit that's behind her. It's like a 100-foot deep pit. Her foot luckily gets stuck in a root, where she doesn't fall all the way down the hill. She's, kind of out cold for a couple of seconds, but comes to and tries to save herself by pulling this old corpse that had also fallen down the hill, which has a knife on it, towards her, where she can grab a knife off of its body, cut herself free, and start climbing back out. What she doesn't know is that the corpse is full of hibernating rattlesnakes.
No.
So she wakes up all the rattlesnakes, and they all start moving around. They start moving towards her. Rooster Cogburn comes over the edge of the hole that she's in and is starting to call down to her and tries to rappel down to her, but not before she's bit in the hand by a rattlesnake. So once they've hauled her back out, he tells LaBeef that she's been bit. LaBeef says, leave me behind. We only have one horse now, and it's Maddie's horse, which she named Little Blackie. And he said, take her back to civilization and try to save her from the venom. So Rooster takes her, leaves LaBeef. They ride back towards civilization. And the closest place is Bagby's store, which is the place they had stopped on their way out. And it's just a kind of this whole thing is taking place in, I think, Comanche territory. So it's very
Choctaw?
ungoverned. Oh, it is Choctaw, yeah. But it's like completely ungoverned. There's no social network or anything like that. So they have to ride all the way back out of the territory in order to get her situated. He rides the horse until it literally collapses, and he ends up executing the horse in front of Maddie. And then he picks her up and carries her the rest of the way, which it never really explains how far that is, but he is like completely exhausted by the end of it. And he drops her at Bagby's store and like barely makes it there and fires off a shot, and you see the lights turn on inside. And then it fast forwards to 20 years later, and Maddie is now much older, and has lost her left arm due to the rattlesnake bite. And she starts talking about how Rooster supposedly stayed with her until she was out of danger, and then she was recovered to Fort Smith, where she went back to her mother and brother who passed away. And now she's just this old maid, and she gets a flyer from Rooster Cogburn and sees that he's with this traveling circus. So she goes to find the circus in Memphis, Tennessee, and by the time she gets there, she finds out that he has passed away like several days before. She has his coffin exhumed and brought back to her family's plot of land and buried next to her mother and father.
Much in the same manner that she has her father's coffin.
Yeah, there's like a very parallel shot of her dad's coffin being loaded into the train and Rooster's coffin being loaded into the train. But she brings him back, she buries him, and then she reminisces about life and how little time we all have and things like that. And then the movie ends. Very, very good stuff. So...
Excellent.
Let me take a few breaths now because I've just been rattling through that. But I love this movie so much. It's such a good story. It's such a good Western. It's such a good Western.
What a classic.
It is
What a classic story.
far from like the anti-Western kind of thing that Tarantino is doing, where it's like both revering and jabbing at like the classic idea of what a Western can be.
This is just a Western.
This is just a classic Western.
It's just a good old cowboy story at its core.
And the Coen Brothers are so good at making Western movies, Western feeling, Western themed. They are all over the place with it. And you can look at the poorer end of the spectrum at something like The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which I think has a lot of successes and a lot of failures. or you can look at something like No Country for Old Men, which is just like this unbelievable, not modern, but modernized retelling of the idea of like a Western story, but without the score and the fanfare and things like that. And that's like that cut back version of No Country for Old Men is why it's so successful. But this one is really just front to back a good Western, and I got a lot of love for it, and I love the way that it's acted.
Cast is phenomenal.
There's a lot of commentary about Jeff Bridges being like Mr. Mumble in this movie, and I've seen this movie so many times that like the lines of dialogue are totally not nonsensical to me, but I can understand how they would be to a lot of other people.
Right.
He's got that southern drawl that's just like almost choking on his tongue, and like there's no clock on my business. It very, very rough and rowdy kind of way of talking.
I was reading up on this movie today, and I saw that the character Rooster is like only 40,
and both actors,
John Wayne and Jeff Bridges, were like in their 60s when they played this role.
I think it said that John Wayne was 60 and Bridges was 62.
Yes, I think that's right.
Which is just I think it works so well, and, like, because of the aging of people in
right. Like, I mean,
you see like 20-year-old guys that look like they were 60.
Yeah, these boys have been through it.
I think it's right after the Civil War, because LaBeef and John LaBeef and Rooster get in an argument about which side of the war they were on.
Oh yeah, that's
He was
right.
like, "You were with General who's or what's it?" And he was like, "General who's or what's it?" Yeah, it's great stuff. But I really just love this movie, and like, we cannot talk about how well acted this movie is without talking about Haley Steinfeld, because she is just
She's 13.
Unbelievable.
Also,
she was 13 and one of 15,000 girls.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
That got cast for this.
That auditioned for this.
Yeah, that got cast for this. Yeah, they had a cast of 15,000.
Not quite.
Yeah, Coen Brothers scripts are so unbelievably witty, and we'll get around to a little bit of that when we get to quotes, but they know how to keep you just constantly entertained in some facet during a movie. I mean, these guys just know how to make a movie so well. It feels like instant classic every time I see it. And
you know when those movies be movieing, like this movie
is movieing,
this
undoubtedly.
Movie like holdovers be movieing.
Yeah, Roger Deakins shot this one. That helps a lot. Roger Deakins is the GOAT.
Isn't he the one that like was gonna do the Batman or Dune 2 or something?
Yeah, I think I have to renege some stuff that I said on that podcast, because I think Greg Fraser, the guy who originally shot the Batman, also originally shot Dune Part 1, and I thought it was Roger Deakins.
Oh, her.
I know that Villeneuve has worked with Deakins a lot, but I think I got that one wrong.
Well, dang.
Deakins is also the guy that did like Blade Runner and the original Blade Runner.
Yeah.
You would have a tough time convincing me that this guy has ever made a bad shot. This movie like really fulfills that. There are a lot of moments, like nothing like the Django. There are some shots in Django that are just unbelievable, and I don't think there's anything as eye-popping in this, but there is stuff that just feels
but like the color
immediately
palette is
classic.
much more muted than it's not.
And it's a very different thing. I don't know. I mean, comparison is the thief of joy. I don't know why I'm doing that, but it's hard to talk about modern westerns. Like, there's not a lot of very successful ones,
right?
At least in the past, like from 2010 to date. But yeah,
But this is one of them.
I think this is undoubtedly one of them, and Deakins totally brings the image to this, which is cool. I like the way that he shoots this. The score for this is really fantastic. It's got an excellent motif. That's one of those like, oh, that's always been there kind of motifs. It's really beautiful. There are several moments in this where it like totally kicks in and just hits like a bullet. It's so good. And it's interesting because the Coen Brothers, like, they had done No Country for Old Men, which has a 0 score. There's not a note of music in that movie. They go and do Burn After Reading in 2008. I can't remember what their 2009 project was, but then they come to this, and it's really interesting because the score is so central to like many tonal shifts within the movie itself. Like there's very peppy moments in the score that shift to like a a darker, minor tone as soon as they come across like a guy hanging from a tree. I think it functions really well, but it's just overall fantastic. Okay, that's pretty. There was an article I briefly wanted to note. I was reading through Letterboxd last night and I saw a review of this that really made me think about it in a different light. And it said that, yes, on one level, True Grit is just a classic Western, a good old-fashioned yarn about heroism, revenge, loss, and family. It does not build on the genre or subvert it. Instead, the Coens work to give us a perfect example of their form, albeit with modern flourishes and darkly comedic sensibility. But you can also watch True Grit as a story about time and aging, about coming to terms with the life you've lived, making something of the life you have, or forging ahead in search of a life of your own. And it is a story about the cruelty of the world and the costs incurred in the trying to survive, navigate, and conquer it. The final scene of a middle-aged Maddie walking away from the graves of her family says everything. And I read that last night and was like, I hadn't thought about it that way.
That is very interesting.
It's very insightful. I really like that reading of it. And I think it's a little ridiculous of me to come into this as like somebody that's doing a podcast about it and read somebody else's words for it, but I just really think that is awesome. So I think that's about all we have to kind of talk about with themes, unless you had anything else. So we can just move into quotes, which
do you want to do real quick entertaining, enlightening, or both?
Yeah, we can go ahead and hit that. I think that Letterboxd review makes it both. I don't think I felt very enlightened by this movie the first time I saw it. I think it is just a thoroughly entertaining and great story.
Just like I said, good story, classic.
Yeah, very good story about not father figure or anything like that. It's just a
mentor.
Really good relationship between an older person recognizing that a younger person can do more than they originally anticipated. And
who doesn't love like the curmudgeon that like softens a little bit because of the young person that comes into their life?
That's always a super, super effective relationship. Okay, quotes. The first one I've got is a little bit of a long one, but I just want to read the opening monologue.
I have a shortened version if you're interested.
Okay,
or if you want to hit the whole monologue, I honestly respect that.
Yeah, I don't need to do it, but at the end of the day, like the final part of this monologue is there's nothing free except the grace of God, which is
you must pay for everything in this world one way or another. There is nothing free except the grace of God. What I have.
It's so good. Just listen to this. People do not give it credence that a young girl could leave home and go off into the winter time to avenge her father's blood, but it did happen. I was just 14 years of age when a coward by the name of Tom Chaney shot my father down and robbed him of his life and his horse and his 2 California gold pieces that he carried in his trouser band. Chaney was a hired man, and Papa had taken him up to Fort Smith to help lead back a string of Mustang ponies he'd bought. In town, Chaney had fallen to drink and cards and lost all his money. We got it into his head he was being cheated and went back to the boarding house for his Henry rifle. When Papa tried to intervene, Chaney shot him. Chaney fled. He could have walked his horse, for not a soul in that city would be bothered to give chase. No doubt Chaney fancied himself scot-free, but he was wrong. You must pay for everything in this world one way or another. There's nothing free except the grace of God. That is so badass.
That's
it's
fire.
Not even funny. It's not even funny. I absolutely like that opening monologue with this beautiful opening shot of like a slow fading in light and seeing Maddie's father like laying dead in the snow as Chaney,
and it like the focus
Chaney blasts past on the horse. Oh, it's so good.
I have to tell like just a brief story because I was watching this movie today at work in the slow times, and my friend Maddie. I just pulled the mic. My friend Maddie was with me, and we were. I had one headphone. She had one headphone. We're watching it together. She's already off. I'm still working. I get a little busy about 20 minutes into the movie. I come back and like throughout the day or throughout the rest of my shift, like she's watching the whole movie, and I loved that so much. And
so good.
And this monologue is part of what locked her in. Like
it's genuinely enrapturing. I don't think there is. There are a couple of downtime moments in this movie, but they are so engaging. It's not funny.
Just even when there's downtime, the dialogue is so good.
Oh, and that
the Coen Brothers are masterful.
They're the best.
Writing.
They are really, really good. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world is vexing enough. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world is vexing enough.
That guy plays Headmaster Charleston in Gilmore Girls. Just so you know.
Congratulations to him. He plays a really great haggling salesman in this one. Who. I have it down in favorite scenes, but there's a scene where Maddie is haggling with this guy, and she's like exerting her prowess at trading over him, and he's like she's this 14-year-old girl, and he's like steadily getting more pissed off. It's so good.
She's like, my lawyer would get mad at me if I accepted any less than $325.
Yeah,
but I'll do it for $320. Oh, girl, get it?
Yeah, she's absolutely like,
I love it.
Stand out in the scene, and then she ends up coming back to that guy, and she's like, "I'll buy a pony off you for $10," and he's like, "Wait, what are we trading again?" He's like terrified of the prospect. It's so good.
One of my favorite quotes kind of goes hand in hand with the scene, which is also one of my favorite scenes. But there's this scene where LaBeef and Rooster kind of get into it, as they do, and they're like, they're talking about like who's the better shot or something, and they start throwing biscuits in the air. And Rooster says he misses a shot, and he says, "The Chinaman is running them cheap shells on me again." LaBeef said, "I thought that you were going to say the sun was in your eyes. That is to say your eye."
That's a every time quote from the Davis family members that love that movie.
Love it. For context, Rooster wears an eye patch.
Yeah, Rooster has not the use of one of his eyes.
But it's just always one of my favorites. I love Matt Damon in this movie. In the beginning, when God created the heaven and the earth,
when Maddie is first meeting Rooster outside of the bathroom, he is on trial for the murder of these young boys that were outlaws, but he kind of more or less murdered in cold blood. And there's just a really good exchange between the judge and the lawyers and Rooster. That's by the way, this is an excellent courtroom scene. Just a very fun courtroom scene. And
do you want to be the lawyer, or do you want to be Rooster? We can act it out.
I'm just gonna. This one's quick. Did you find what happened to the jar with $120 in it? The lawyer says leading, and the other lawyer says sustained. The judge says, "What happened next?" And Rooster says, "I found a jar with $120."
And this is after they do the gray rock thing. He's like the gray rock with the hollowed out space underneath.
I always go backwards when I'm backing up.
Okay, that's not even the quote I had. I had, "Mr. Cogburn, in your 4 years as U.S. Marshal, how many men have you shot or killed? Let us restrict it to killed so we may have a manageable figure."
So it was a cold-blooded bushwhack.
I love that.
That scene is among my favorite courtroom scenes. I did not know.
Chicanery.
I do not remember. Oh, it's so good. There's a nice, just a quick little exchange between Maddie and Lucky Ned toward the end of the movie, and Maddie says, "Do you need a good lawyer?" And Lucky Ned says, "I need a good judge." It's just a good one. Oh, just a good outlaw quote. The Lucky Ned Pepper Gang at the end of this it's not as fleshed out as it could be, but it doesn't need to be, because they just did such a good job at making those guys characters, even though they're showing up for 5 minutes at best. And it reminded me a lot of Red Dead 2. It reminds me of the Vanderland Gang a little bit. It's very good.
Speaking of the Lucky Ned Pepper Gang, I have another one. Maddie says to Lucky Ned, "If I had killed Cheney, I would not be in this fix, but my gun misfired." And Ned Pepper kind of laughs, and he's like, they'll do that
to you.
It'll embarrass you every time. Most girls, oh my gosh, I am just stuttering like a monster. Most girls like to play pretties, but you like guns, do you? And she says, "I do not care a thing about guns. If I did, I would have one that worked." And
she's good.
She's so good. She's so witty.
What is it that she says when they're walking up to the camp? She's like, "Can I have some bacon?" And he's like, "You can. There's bacon, coffee. We're light on supplies." And she goes, "I don't drink coffee. I am 14.
Yes.
So good.
She's great.
There are quotes from this movie that I use all the time. One of which is LaBeef's exit from every scene whenever he's leaving the duo behind is "Adios."
Adios.
Adios. Say that all the time. "There is no clock on my business" is another one that I say all the time. It's when Rooster's in the bathroom and Maddie is vigorously trying to talk to him, and he's just in this outhouse, and she's like, "I'm Maddie Ross," and he's like, "The Jakes is occupied. Will be for some time." Oh, it's so good. I've seen this movie a painful amount of times, but it leaps for joy every time I see it.
I have to mention the title card, which is just great. It's
yeah.
The wicked flee when none pursueth. Proverbs 28:1.
Followed by like just beautiful haunting piano.
The
Oh my
wicked
goodness.
flee when none pursueth.
Oh my goodness.
With,
It's so good.
First of all, just a great Bible verse anyways, but also within the context of this movie, excellent. Just outstanding stuff.
I totally just savor stuff like that. The last quote that I have is the last quote in the movie. Time just gets away from us. As Maddie is walking away from the parents' graves and her brother's grave and like everything that she was loved or has loved or was attached to in her life, and she just doesn't have it anymore, which is a common theme of this movie. And the way that I kind of read this movie this time that I watched it is there's like a very past, present, and future thing going on with Rooster, Maddie, and LaBeef.
Oh, for sure.
And like LaBeef is out to make a name for himself, and Rooster's already,
He's kind of like
become
washed up.
this old dog.
Yeah.
And he sees like what Maddie is and how smart and sharp she is, and like perpetuates her future by literally carrying her to the finish line. It's incredible. I really love this movie. So,
do you want to move on to favorite scenes?
Yeah.
I think this is a good transition because you talked about like when he carries her to the finish line, because that sequence of them riding Little Blackie and like you see like the
him
sweat.
knifing Little Blackie to keep him going, and
Yes, like the sweat beating up on the horse's head, and like just the way that it's shot is gorgeous, and also heartbreaking. Like when
it's
he
really
kills
like
the horse. That's so sad.
Honestly, that is sad, and like
I was gonna keep going. I was gonna say like him literally, his determination and like just pushing himself until the point where he like once he gets to where he's going, he literally collapses.
Yeah, it's like his final fondness. It's really good.
It's so touching.
That's always like the tears well up moment.
For
and
sure.
with the score in the background, with like the beautiful like silhouette of them riding against the night sky.
And this little 13-year-old girl, and she's like crying because her horse just died.
Yeah,
like,
it's unbelievably good. Going back towards the front of the movie, Maddie arguing with the salesman is
yes.
I as I was watching that scene last night, I was like, I could watch this scene 100 times and laugh at it every time. It is it is such
like,
good haggling.
She gets his ass. Like,
She toasts him. She absolutely toasts him, and she's like, what if you bought back all the ponies because my dad is dead now, and if you don't, I'm going to send my lawyer after you with a widow and 3 small children.
And you're going to pay for the horse that was stolen while it was in your care.
Yeah.
Like, she's just so good. There's a point later on in the movie where there's like a stable boy when she's going to get the horse, and she's like, thank Mr. Stonewall for me. And he's like, I'm not supposed to say your name. Like, like we're not talking about you.
She literally starts the conversation with, we sold our cotton this year for this price, and the guy's like, well, we sell it for a cent lower than that, and she's like, well, those guys ended up selling it to us for half a cent less, so we're back in the business and we'd like to negotiate. And he's just like, what?
This little girl is just
it's so good. Rooster in the courtroom, I already mentioned that. One of my truly like one of the most memorable courtroom scenes I've ever seen. That's a Zach Davis take, but I love that scene. Maddie crossing the river, which is just a very, very wonderful moment. There's a funny little goof here where which is actually in the original True Grit, where Maddie comes out of the river and she's more or less dry, like one shot later, and it's the exact same way in the original, which is pretty funny.
I love that. Didn't she have short hair in the original?
Yes, yeah, she had a total bob. She was much more of a tomboy in the original.
Like the Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Yeah, very much that 80s or 70s hairstyle, I guess. We don't know those boys you're looking for. This is what I titled the scene in the cabin, where Rooster is trying to press the young kid into giving him the location of the Lucky Ned Pepper gang, and the kid's like, I don't know, and the other guy's like, we don't know those boys you're looking for, don't tell them. And Rooster starts pressing him, and he's like, you've got that shotgun shot in your leg. He's like, I can take you back and get that ball out, and we might be able to save the leg, and I can give you a shorter sentence. And the guy just starts to slowly crack, and the other guy's just like, "We don't know those boys you're looking for. Don't tell them." And then he kills him it's such a good sequence. It's
the finger chopping.
Oh, the finger chopping is epic. It's so memorable. Probably my most memorable moment from the first time I watched this movie.
No, for sure. Like I can see it. I think that Dad might have covered my eyes or something the first time I watched this, but
I also have "Fill Your Hand, You Son of a Bitch," which is just awesome. Jeff Bridges screaming that is something that will forever hold rent in my head. And then the last two favorite scenes that I wrote down at the end are the last 30 minutes of the movie and the whole movie. Because it's just so good.
That basically, you hit all the good ones. I mean, I mentioned the biscuit shooting scene earlier, which is just great. Like, they get into, like, a little scuffle, and I think Maddie mentioned something about, like, you're wasting our food. She's like, what are you doing, dumbass?
Yeah. Like, there's a really good one where they're not arguing. Rooster's trying to get her to climb this tree to cut down this body, and he's like, well, clamber up there. I'm too old and too fat. And she starts climbing up the tree, and he, without a beat, like, continues a story from where he was earlier. And she cuts down the guy, and she's like, it's not Cheney, and like lands with a thud next to Rooster, and he like kicks it over, and he's like, I do not know this man.
I do not know this man.
It's so awesome.
When she first gets to town, Maddie, there's like a hanging happening, and
great hanging scene.
This is like, it's funny in an offensive way.
It feels, wow, can I say it any more times? It feels like a Blazing Saddles scene.
No,
like,
it feels like the Blazing
Saddles scene.
Like, it's very offensive, but I mean, in a funny way.
I would like to say.
No, so they have these three men that are all being hanged for, I don't know if it's the same crime, individual crimes, whatever, but they're all being hanged together, and two of them are white and one's an Indian, and I can't remember the Indian's name, but it's...
I don't think they name him.
No, it's something like he who runs with wolves, or like some like super obvious name. And they give the two white men like an opportunity to talk, and like one of them is talking. He's like apologetic. He's like, I'm so sorry.
Don't fall into bad company.
And then the next guy is like, well, I would have killed a different man. I killed the wrong man. There's still bad men out in this crowd.
I do believe if I killed the right man, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. And then they get to the Indian guy, and he's like, I have something I'd like to say. And they just put the bag right over him, like, immediately.
Bag him. And then he starts singing a tribal song.
And then, like, I'm sorry. Like, I might get canceled for laughing at it, but
no, it is there to be laughed at. It's very true to like the original tone of the first movie.
And I mean, like, it's like,
and it's very true.
Accurate.
Yeah, like if you, the irony with which the Coen Brothers do that scene is not. It does not lose like its luster of like, okay, well, this is definitely going to make you think of the treatment of Native Americans in this era.
Yes.
Anyway. I love that scene. Do you have any other favorite scenes that you
think
wanted to
that's
mention?
pretty much it.
I could talk about the whole movie. I know the movie from front to back.
To mention it, really, like, it terrified me as a child. I still look away when the snake bites her, but the sequence where she falls down, and then, like, she pulls the...
Mr. LeBave!
Oh my god! I'm always like, no!
Oh, God.
So good.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and she's just a
little baby.
She's so good at speaking, like the way that she said, like Rooster's like, "Can you climb her out?" And she's like, "I cannot." It's so good.
I'm obsessed with her.
Okay, let's do some fun facts. So,
okay.
I already mentioned the first one. Maddie and her horse are completely dry after swimming across the river. But here's a fun one. Because of child labor laws, Joel and Ethan were unable to film any scenes past midnight with Haley. Especially difficult because the movie contains a lot of night sequences, and because of scheduling problems, at any time there is another shot of another character over Maddie's shoulder or back, Maddie is played by an adult double, not her, not Steinfeld. They had to do a lot of technical work around for this movie. Just like I said at the top of it, majority of the child labor laws. But it's really fascinating.
I forgot. I have another favorite quote. I'm sorry.
No.
I was looking at one of my fun facts, which there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie when Maddie first gets to town again, and she has to stay the night, and she can't afford to stay the night anywhere because her dad's like to send the coffin home was more than they anticipated. And so she spends all of her money, and she ends up staying at the undertaker's, which is the only scene they added out of the book, because I think in the original and maybe in the book, the Undertaker like offers it to her.
If you'd like to kiss him.
And that's it. That's my favorite. I love that quote. If you'd like to kiss him,
this Irish
you may do so now. And he says it like,
it'd be all right.
It'd be all right. That's what it is. And he says that twice, and then later on, he says something else to her.
She has to sleep in a coffin at the Undertaker's, and he's like, if you'd like to sleep in a coffin,
that would be all right. I love that.
Great character.
Love that.
Great Coen Brothers characters.
So yeah, fun fact, that was added in, but also love that line.
Fun fact, J.K. Simmons makes a quick brief appearance in this movie. He is the lawyer. He is J. Noble Daggett, and the only time you hear his voice is when Maddie is reading a letter from him,
and you never see his face.
Never see him. That and there's like a 30-second voice clip from him. That's it, and he's great. He's just awesome.
I've been dying to share this fun fact because I wasn't sure where Maddie was at in the movie, so I didn't want to tell her. So obviously, LaBeef's character splits his tongue.
Yeah, he bites his tongue open.
Yeah, like halfway through the movie, maybe.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the movie, he like talks in a garbled voice because his tongue is messed up. In order to achieve this, Matt Damon like put either a string or a hair tie, depending on the situation, around his tongue. And so, like, he's actually just struggling. Like, he's just having a hard time.
He spills the banks of English. It's really great. And it's awesome. Like, I've saw a lot of complaints about just the mumblecore of the second half of this movie after he bites his tongue. It's like, then Jeff Bridges is mumbling at him, and he's mumbling at Jeff. And I'm like, I live in Tennessee. These guys make perfect sense to me. There's a total body count of 14 in this movie, which is a pretty high number for a movie that is not narrowly focused, but as narrowly focused as this, and especially a PG-13 one. And the nature of the gore in this movie is really wild, because they had to fit it into PG-13 constraints, but they are really pushing the boundaries on a lot of those.
That fits well with my next fun fact. This is the Coen Brothers' only PG-13 movie, which
sure
is potentially why it was so theatrically successful.
Yeah, and that is probably why it launched to so much critical acclaim, is because more people were able to see it.
I mean, we watched this growing up.
Yeah.
But that also launches me into my next fun fact, which, even though it was theatrically successful, it was nominated for 10 Oscars all in all, between actors and everything.
How many did it win, Emmy?
Not a single one.
0.
Not a single one.
And
snubbery.
Yeah, I snub. Yes, the Coen Brothers have been recognized for much greater works.
I think that there were some.
But
acting.
To me, this hurts.
There were some acting. There was some acting.
Haley Steinfeld absolutely should have gotten not just Best Supporting Actress, but Best Actress. Yeah, who won Best Supporting Actress in 2010?
I'm on it.
Yeah, there's nothing that could make me stop loving this movie. Jeff Bridges is also just one of my favorite actors of all time. I absolutely adore the way that he plays characters, and I think he's so damn good and so perfect in this movie. And people that can't understand him turn on subtitles. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. His acting is just that good. Maybe it doesn't make for great movie watching for people that don't understand it, but I think it's fantastic. Matt is really great and like flexing a lot of muscles that he really hasn't since in this movie, and his performance as LaBeef is awesome. Josh Brolin is like barely in this movie, but it's really fun to see his character when he is, because he's like going from, I mean, his 2007 work with
Melissa
No Country for Old
Leo
Men.
in The Fighter.
Oh, that is bad news.
The other nominees were Amy Adams in The Fighter, Helena Bonham Carter, Helena Bonham Carter in The King's Speech, Haley in True Grit, and then Jackie Weaver in Animal Kingdom. What?
I think Helena Bonham Carter would have been the only other person.
No,
that
literally,
I would
what's
put on
happening
that list.
there?
Yeah, that's a 2010s Oscars.
What in the world?
That's when the Oscars
this
were
is
the Golden Globes.
Technically the 2011 Oscars.
That's when the Oscars were like a lot more akin to the Golden Globes.
Javier Bardem did get Best Actor nom though.
What, for Dead Man's Chest?
Beautiful. I don't know. I just hit the mic.
Yeah, beautiful.
B-I-U.
I don't think I've seen that one. I'll have to check into that because that was an interesting
Social
interesting
Network,
time for
127 hours. Ooh,
oh
this is
my
a good
god,
year.
that was the year the
The
Social
Kids
Network
Are All
was there.
Right. Black Swan.
Did the Social Network win Best Original Screenplay?
Oh my gosh, give me a second.
Go down the list on that. Regardless, True Grit, I adore this movie. I don't own this movie on physical copy currently. That is about to change as soon as the snowstorm that is about to hit Tennessee blows over.
The winner was King's Speech.
Wow.
Oh, Inception was also nominated. I'm sorry. I'm like totally down a rabbit hole right now.
No, I think it's a good conversation.
Here's something I do want to address though. I do want to address the Best Actress nominations because I think that Haley could have gone into that as well.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman won for Black Swan. We're also looking at Annette Bening for The Kids Are All Right.
Okay.
Nicole Kidman for Rabbit Hole.
Yikes.
Jennifer Lawrence for Winter's Bone.
Rabbit Hole's okay.
And Michelle Williams for Blue Valentine.
Yeah, I think Haley has the biggest achievement here. I mean,
for sure. I mean, this is also her first. Like, this is her breakout role.
Yeah. As much as I love Michelle Williams,
what a breakout role.
Michelle Williams proceeds to do the same thing for 10 years.
Don't care. I'm gonna eat it up.
I do not get me wrong. I love Michelle Williams, but she proceeds to do the next thing or the same thing for the next several years. Yeah, I think Haley should have won that for sure. I think hers is probably the only worthy Oscar actor nomination for this movie. I don't think that Jeff's is like anything that's
he did get nominated though.
That's great and crazy. But I think Haley should have won for this. But overall, this movie is just wonderful.
Excellent. What's your
rating? Highly recommend this movie. I think I give this one an 8 out of 10 overall, which is a little low. Personally, to me, it's more close to a 9 out of 10. But
I was going to say an 8.5.
Yeah,
so.
just for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to say an 8 out of 10. And in context with the fact that I've now watched so many damn Coen Brothers movies back to back, and have been watching them over the course of my life. I'm rewatching like a majority of them. Those guys are the best. I mean, they regardless of their more recent works and the fact that they're kind of not preferring but are working solo a lot of the time nowadays. It's just nice to harken back to a time when they were on the absolute top end of the business. And I think this movie is a good time capsule of 2010. I think it's a good time capsule of 1969. And it's just a fantastic
capsule of the
modern
time it's
Western.
set in.
Fantastic modern Western. So that's all I got to say about True Grit. We forgot to do double features, so we'll move on to.
We'll post it in the caption of the.
Yeah, I'd watch Django Unchained. I mean,
watch
that's
Django
the
Unchained.
answer.
Played Red Dead.
Played Red Dead Redemption 2. Just pay attention to the Vanderlyn gang and just think about Lucky Ned Pepper gang. So. Anyway, we're bracing for some crazy weather here in Tennessee, so we're probably not going to get out this weekend. However, I have booked tickets to go see The Brutalist on Wednesday of next week. It's going to be showing in IMAX. We're getting special posters and everything. Lord willing, the roads will be thawed enough by Wednesday to where I can drive up to Knoxville and see it. Come hell or high water, I'm going to see this movie. I am so unbelievably excited for the showing. So until then, we will do a weekend roundup on Sunday. It'll probably be pretty brief.
I'm going to be talking about Gia Coppola's The Last Showgirl and how much I loved Pamela Anderson and was really... Sophia, tell your sister to get it together.
She got some work to do.
Yeah.
Well, at least she's not beguiling.
Hey, I like the beguiled.
I think it's fine.
It's fine. I mean, but it's not her best work. Okay.
Nicole Kidman is far from my favorite.
Next weekly highlight will be me talking about Sophia Coppola for 3 hours. I will just read the archive to you guys. Thank you, Dad. I got it for Christmas.
Yeah, the Sophia Coppola archive is a hot coffee table item in our household now.
I'd be reading it.
Anywho, you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. If you are in Tennessee, stay safe,
anywhere
stay warm.
There's crazy weather. It's all over.
I guess it's hitting everywhere from like Texas to North Carolina.
Drive safe, you crazy
Be
goons.
careful. It's a crazy season. So we'll catch you guys later.
Get your milk, get your bread, get your toilet paper.
Get your dippins.
Your dippins.
Your dippins and fixins.
Your dippins and fixins, and have a good night, boys.
Adios. Adios.
Adios.